into it. All right. So I just want to thank you all for hopping on here. Like I said, I was having some technical difficulties. So my apologies for the delay. But I'm excited for the new year. I'm excited that you all are here. There has been a lot that has happened, and particularly in my life in 2024. And just out of that, just really made me think about how important it is to just do it, right? Like Nike says, just to get out there and make things happen and stop holding your own self back from things that you know you need to be doing, things that you know you've been called to do. And this is also a way for me to be able to grieve, and as I'm grieving, help other people. So for those of you who don't know me, and particularly those on YouTube, my name is Camille Aiko, and my mission is to inspire people to live the life that they love spiritually, mentally, physically, and financially. And so tonight we are starting our lives on good grief. Sometimes there's so much that is going on in life, or bad things seems to be happening back to back, one thing after another. And then we start saying things like, when it rains, it pours, and good grief, like, when can we catch a break? And so, I began to think about that, and I was like, let's turn that around. Instead of it being something exasperating, let's actually mean good grief, because grief is part of life. And sometimes we grieve because we've lost someone who was dear to us. And sometimes we're grieving because there has been a great transition in our life, and we feel like we're going through a time of loss, whether, that is a loss of a job, or for me personally, my husband had a health crisis, and what I thought our life was going to look like for these past couple of years, it hasn't. And, that was a grieving period for me as well. And so being able to say, okay, how do we take this natural part of life called grief, turn it into something positive? And so I just want to encourage you all that no matter where you are in this grief journey, that it's natural, it's okay. Everybody does it differently. And we are here to encourage one another, to support one another, and push each other through. So I'll be hosting these from time to time. Haven't quite set that schedule yet, but we'll be hosting these so that we can equip each other and encourage each other as we're going through this grief journey. So this is a safe space where we can come and just talk about the challenges that we're experiencing of grief and transitioning, and also discovering faith and different principles, practical tools that we can use to be able to overcome and experience the healing. So the purpose tonight is we're going to be talking about the cycles of emotions. And so we're going to have a guest to come on here shortly and join us. But he's really going to talk about what it takes to be able to move through, and what it looks like for each cycle of emotion that we experience. Let me sit up here so that I don't fade in the background as well. But while we're waiting for him to come on, I just want to talk a little bit about what does the grief part, because I've turned that into an acronym, right? So we have good, and then we have grief, which is an acronym, and the G stands for ground yourself in faith. So over this past year, my mother, she ended up getting COVID in the end of July. And at the time that she got that, she just never was able to bounce back. Like, my mother has had health issues, but we weren't anticipating the decline that she experienced in the way that she did. And so one day I just woke up and my sister had called me. So I called her back. She's like, I need you to get here now. Like, something's going on with mom. We don't know what's happening. It doesn't look good. And I'm like, okay, I'm asking questions. And so I told him, I said, test her for COVID and get her to a hospital as soon as possible. And they tested her. She was positive, and she went into the hospital. And from there, she developed pneumonia, and just given all of her heart health issues, she just wasn't able to bounce back. And so she passed in September. And every time I talk about my mother, it brings tears to my eyes. And that's just part of the grief journey. So I'm not going to apologize for it. But I don't know where I would be without my faith in this process, right? To be able to lean on to the word of God and be like, you know what? This is what I know to be true. And this is what I have to stand on. And this is what gives me hope. And this is what, even in the midst of my sorrow, can give me joy, right? Thank you, Celeste. So, G is grounding ourselves in our faith and grounding ourselves in principles, like it's okay to cry, right? Because oftentimes we're like, no, we can't cry, or we try to hold in the emotions when really that's part of the grieving process. We need to let that out. And we need to allow people to see us in our vulnerable moments, because how else if will they know it's okay for them to do it if they don't see us, right? And so I have made it a point that if anytime I'm talking about my mother and I begin to cry, or talking about my grandparents, or talking about, even my father, just so many different things, that if I cry, I'm not going to apologize. And I'm just going to let people know I'm not going to apologize, but expect some tears, right? So R for the grief is reflect on what you're feeling and why, right? Like, why are you feeling the way that you feel? Um, for instance, and I'll keep talking about my mother for now, but at the kitchen table, we all had different seats that we sat in. Even as adults, we all are like, that's my seat, that's my seat. And sometimes, not just one day, but sometimes I just get these overwhelming emotions when I'm looking at my mother's seat. And it's kind of like I'm able to really think about, well, why do I feel overwhelming emotions just by looking at a seat? And that's because that's where she used to sit, right? And not seeing her in that seat makes me feel the absence even more. It's kind of like, even my nephew, my family gets together for Sunday dinners. And my nephew was just, I told him to have a seat where my mother used to sit. And he was like, you know what, I don't feel comfortable sitting in that seat. And it's important for us to even go through and understand when we're triggered or when we feel those things, why do we feel the way we feel, right? It's important to be intentional, to stop and think about why the thing that triggered us. I initiate action to move forward, even in small steps. So even with, creating the group Good Grief, I've experienced grief before, right? I've had all types of grief in life, from experiencing loss to in jobs, or feeling like a business loss, or other family members, but nothing quite hit like losing my mother. This has been a whole new thing. And so even in those small steps to try and move forward and experience growth, I'm here, right? And I'm showing up so that I can help myself and help other people in the process. E stands for embrace the emotions and don't let them control you, right? Because we can get to a place where we feel angry. For instance, there was one time in particular, um, with my mother, I had gone out because I'm like, as a caregiver, I was my mother's caregiver, and I just felt tired. I'm like, I just need a break. I want to go out. And I did. And while we were out, my mother decided she was tired and she was going to go to bed. So she walked up the stairs. But when she walked up the stairs, she ended up having a heart attack. Now, normally I would have been here and me and my father would have carried her upstairs in a wheelchair. And for a moment, I could begin to feel myself to be angry. Like, why? Angry with myself? Because it's just like, Camille, why didn't you just stay? Right? Or then it was angry with my father, like, well, why didn't you just make her stay? Why didn't you just wait? And it was okay to feel those emotions, but I also had to put those emotions in check. Like, was that really my fault? Was that really his fault? No, it was none of our faults per se, right? It's what happened. And so I had to acknowledge those emotions and then not allow those emotions to control me. And so that might be like, you're angry that you didn't say something. You're angry that somebody did something to you. Or maybe you're just angry that the loss happened. It's important for us not to allow those emotions to control us. acknowledge them, but don't allow them to control us. And we know that sadness can take us to a place of depression. So it's so important that once we're experiencing these emotions, especially if they're low energy type of emotions, that we then put something immediately in place. And these are the types of things that we'll be talking about on how to flip that, how to flip it from a negative emotion to something positive, a positive thought, a positive feeling, how to readjust so that these emotions do not control us, because it's easy. It's easy to get upset. I'll give you guys another example of this. Is just like, you know, the grief process is different for everybody. And you never know what might be triggering for one that's not triggering for the other. And an example of that for my family in particular was like, some of us didn't want to be asked the question, well, how are you doing? Because it was like, my mother just died. What you mean? How am I doing? I'm not doing good, right? But other people don't know that. And sometimes they don't know exactly what to say to you or how to say it. And some people are like really holding that, because when you not because, but when you hold those emotions, sometimes it gets redirected wrongly, and cutting people off unnecessarily. It's like, geez, all they did was ask you, how are you doing? Right. But these are some things to just consider. Um, and when you feel yourself getting uptight, or again in those negative, low vibrating, low energy places, that you really take the time in particular during those times to assess why it is that you feel, right? So that way you're not stuck in this cycle of letting that control you, or even just getting to a place where it's like an obsessive type of sadness, or obsessive type of conversation about the loss, because that can also happen where we just get in this cycle where the only thing we want to talk about is the loss, the loss, the loss, the loss, the loss. And it's like, we can't move on in life if we are stuck right there at that point. Yes, we can take the lessons, we can share the memories, but we can't allow it to get us to a point where we become stagnant in every other area of our life. We have to learn how to compartmentalize the loss that we have experienced and said, okay, this is the loss that I experienced, but I still have my spiritual life. I still have my mental life. I still have my physical life. I still have my job life. I still have these other responsibilities that I have to deal with. So it's important that we're able to say, okay, this is the loss. Acknowledge it. It was a part of my life. This is how I feel. It's still going on. I might experience grief for years. I may never stop experiencing it. But how do you take it and intentionally deal with the grief that you have? Right. All right. And then F is focus on God's promises and your purpose. Focus on God's promises and your purpose. So you have to even be in God's word to even know what the promises are, right? To give you a hope and a good future. You have to know that God wants you to live an abundant life, right? That God will heal the brokenhearted. And so we have to know what the word says to be able to say, God, you said in your word that you would heal me. You said that you would be a father to the fatherless and a mother to the motherless. You said, right? And you have to begin to speak that word back so that you can truly stand on God's word. And then when you're walking into your purpose, sometimes, guys, when we experience loss, this is the greatest time for birth as well. This is the greatest time where we can come back and say, you know what? I experienced that loss, but this is what I've learned from it. And this is how I'm going to grow from it. Some people have started businesses. Some people have started hobbies. Some people have started organizations. So there's so many things that come from this. And so if you're feeling led in your time of transition and in your time of loss to do something in a special way. Maybe that's, if it's your family died from some certain type of cancer and now you want to become an advocate and you really are feeling called to that, then guess what? Do it. Do those things. Don't allow your loss to be without legacy. Make sure that you are carrying on legacy within everything that you are doing to honor the ones that you have lost. And if it's in a loss, just as far as like a transition in life, sometimes it's those tough losses in life, again, that leads you to identify what is the solution to the problem that you experienced. Because if you experienced it, then that means somebody else probably is experiencing it as well. And if that is the case and you have a solution, then guess what? You can also turn that into something positive. And again, it can be a business, it can be an organization, it could be a nonprofit, it could be so many different things. It could be a passion project. But don't allow, sometimes the things that we have that happen to us happen for us to birth something greater, right? Sometimes it's in the pruning, it's in the taking away that we become more. And that's what we have to keep in mind. So I just want you to know that you guys are not alone. I'm here. And I know even sometimes as we're grieving, we don't really want to even have somebody there per se. Sometimes for me, grief looks like I need time to myself to really think about what I'm feeling, process my emotions on my own without having to hear a bunch of like cliche things or stuff that you might say that might irritate me that I don't even know might irritate me until you say it. And then I'm like, well, why'd you say that? Oh, right. So these are the things that we're talking about and dealing with. And it's okay to feel those things. So inside of the our group, inside of the Good Grief community, guys, again, it's a safe, non-judgmental place for us to be able to share our emotions, to share our feelings, to share our stories, to share our ideas, to encourage one another to get involved in some of the passion projects, the businesses that might come from this. And so we are going to be teaching guidedly how to, I just made that word up, guidedly, I'm pretty sure that's not a word, but how to, when you have an idea from the loss that you've experienced, how to take that and to create something greater out of that. So we're also going to have a series on that. So we're going to have tips in there and stories and just things to help us to navigate through grief and life transitions. Um, so let's see here. Let me just check my notes to see if I'm missing anything in our guest. In fact, the guest is my father. He double booked himself. And so I'm seeing if he's going to hop on here. But let's see. All right. So I guess what I'll do, is there anything that you all would like to share while you're here, or just express anything in regards to your story of grief, or honor anybody, or honor anyone's legacy? Go ahead, Nicole.
This week alone, I've lost two people. One person very close to me, 20 plus years, and my sister, the 22nd of this month would be 3 going on 4 years. And the person that really I lost yesterday was the mother of the church that helped raise me. And it's just like, I just have to process. I'm grateful that I'm aware and that I'm learning to accept it. And I've learned through this journey in life that you have to focus on yourself and feed yourself first before giving it to someone else, because you can't give what you don't have. So all I wanted to continue to do in this life, in this journey that God gave me, is to show love and do it in love and care in love, because most of the discrimination and the backlash of the church not accepting individuals is because they didn't do it in love and they were felt rejected. So I just want to say I honor you. I'm thankful and grateful to be connected to you, even through your husband, um, has changed my life. So I'm grateful. I'm thankful. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you, Nicole, for sharing. Celeste, is there anything or anyone? Well, obviously, there's not obviously because not everybody's on the Zoom, but Celeste, did you want to share?
Hi, excuse my head. I have something on it, but I'm always grateful to follow you. You've been such an inspiration. Through Facebook. I've never met you personally, but I'm glad that sometime even with me, how um things turn out to be your purpose. I can't think of your tragedy might turn out not even tragedy, but it turns out to be your purpose because
Yeah.
when my mom died in 2014, it was so hard and I had a breakdown after she died. But when I got myself together, that's when I found my purpose. And my purpose is to help people with their grieving. And just all I can say is just take one day at a time because I lost my father in 2022 and it still hurts. It really hurts because he was like, I love my mother, but he was my ride or die. After my mother died, I took care of both of them. And just I can just say all we can do is just take one day at a time. And it's okay to cry. And I just thank you for everything that you're doing in this group.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, Celeste, honey. I'm sure that definitely hurts when COVID hit. My father was hospitalized for, I believe it was like 51 days. The majority of that time he was in a medically induced coma. So of course, during that time, we couldn't even go see him. Um, and I could only imagine if he didn't pull through, um, what life would be like without him and without my mother. So definitely continue to keep both of you in prayer. We'll just keep each other in prayer. Maybe that's a piece we need to incorporate into the group where we're just
Yeah,
praying for each other to to keep pushing through. So let's see here. I'm trying to wait, y'all, give y'all a little taste because it is the cycle of emotions is a very powerful framework that, oh, he's coming. We're in the same house, by the way. He just had a different virtual session to be on. So I will introduce now. He's got about 10-15 minutes, and we'll do another one though to follow up, guys, and make up for this. But you can sit here in a second. But my father, who has now been in the ministry since 1993, um, it's been that long, or 1993 or 1991. We moved. Either way, it's been a while. But he's developed. I'm introducing you, so don't go too far. Um, but he has developed the cycle of emotions framework. We've been stalling. We've been sharing, so don't leave. Um, framework. And so he's just going to come and just share a little bit about how he was able to develop it and just kind of walk you all through it. Of course, this is going to be the abridged version. I also have a podcast that I'm going to be on at in just a few minutes. So we will definitely get him to come back. But I'm going to introduce at this time my father, Bishop Nathan Perry. All right. Take it away, Dad.
All right. Okay. Well, hello to everyone.
You're also live on YouTube. So
All right. I'm also alive. I'm live in this chair, and it's great to be with you. It's an honor. And I like to share a few things. As my daughter was speaking about the cycle of emotions, that the notion that I want to share with you that I learned some years ago. And this started off from my own personal experience. And one day, and I was working and I was very unhappy. And I couldn't get it together. You know, maybe some of you can uh, identify with the notion that are you happy? Are you really content and excited about what you're doing? Or have you gotten to the point that feel like you are burnt out, you're angry, you feel like you're ready to quit, you need to move to something new? And one of the things that I found out in the job that I was working that I wasn't happy. Um, but as I began to explore, it wasn't just the company. I was not happy within myself. And over the time of the company of being unhappy, I began to find out that there are certain things and that as I went through that were not I was not at content with. One of it, I just didn't know who I was. Didn't know where I was trying to go. Didn't understand really what really indeed made me happy, and I I didn't figure that out where I was at the time, but it was a few years later. It was a few years later, and I had a sizable organization. I worked for one of the largest um, marketers in the country. Some of you may have heard of the company. It was called Procter and Gamble. I worked for Procter and Gamble for 20 some odd years. And one day I had an employee who was up one day, down another, up, I'm quitting one day. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I go and I just listen to her. And as she was going through her frustrations of feeling like she had not been fairly treated, that she was not promoted, that she was not recognized for her contributions, that she felt like people had lied to her. She felt like, oh, I'm just not happy with nothing. You know, I'm going to quit. And like, why are you going to do all of this? And it dawned on me. It dawned on me one day is, gosh, you sound just like I just like I was a few years ago. And I got up to the board and I drew a circle because she would go from flip to flop every time we talked. It was something different. And I began to go like, my goodness, you express the same kinds of things that I was expressing a few years ago, that I was not happy at all. You know, one day you'll be happy, and the next couple of days you'll be unhappy. Or in the season, these things can fluctuate from being an immediate time to a year or whatever the case. Anybody, you know, it's too bad I can't see your faces because I really love to engage. That's when I think I really give my best presentation of this. Are you happy? That's the question that you need to ask yourself. And what I have found out, there are some fundamental cycles, there are some fundamental things that determines whether you are happy doing what you're doing or you are unhappy. And the problem is that all of us kind of get to this unhappy stage, or that if we are happy, we don't really know what causes us to be happy. And if we get unhappy, we don't know how to get out of it. Uh, so here's what I found out, that there were some basic elements that in my life that I needed to stay in this cycle. And, you know, and if you want to think about it tonight, pictorially, think of it as a clock. I began to look at it as I needed to stay at 12 o'clock. And that is in a dream situation. I needed to stay in. What if I could achieve this? What if I could do this? I would be happy. Oh my. And the more that I tick down toward the left side of that clock to 3 o'clock, if I got beyond 3 o'clock, I was no longer happy. Yeah. And some of you are probably right in that situation too. And one of the things is like at 12 o'clock, that's your dream. That is like if I could really do what I want to do, no matter what it is, I don't care. It's immaterial about whether you're in the ministry, whether you're in sales, whether you're in engineering, or whatever your teacher, your doctor, lawyer, you got to be in a place of thinking, am I doing my dream? Am I really accomplishing what I want? And because right there at your dream, you are the happiest. You never dreamed you could have been in that place before. You never dreamed like, well, I could be using the skills. I could be going where I want to go. Oh my. And then wait a minute. And that seems sometimes kind of unrealistic. Oh, come on. Really? But then I started thinking, like, I found out I probably didn't have my dream job, but I could have a vision. Right? I can always continue to work there. And then I began to go, what I need to develop a vision where I really want to be. Because in this dream job, it may just be that I may never accomplish what the dream job is, but I can have a vision of where I want to be and where I am happy and I'm being productive. And it makes me want to wake up in the morning. Oh yeah, I can't wait to go to sleep. I mean, I can't wait to wake up. It's kind of like the night is too long. Oh my, yeah. Um, I didn't have the job like that for a while, and I was like, couldn't sleep at night. And I found out, that clock, I wasn't at 12 o'clock, but I was really at 6 o'clock. And that is the absolute worst place to be because, on one hand, but it's not until you get to 6 o'clock that you make a commitment to go like, you know what? I've had enough of this unhappiness. I've had enough of this complacency. I've had enough of, doing something that you want to blame everybody else and their brother for your failure. Until you get to a place that I call it, I won't take this any longer. Huh? I won't take this anymore. Nothing really happens other than you are bothered. So in this cycle of emotions, what I found out that there were some various degrees and there were some principles that needed to be in place in my life that could keep me at above the 3 o'clock, if you would, above the 3 o'clock and the 9. I had to stay in that half quadrant. If I stay in that half quadrant of the cycle, I was pretty much happy. When you fall below that line, you are unhappy character, I tell you. Now, what I want to talk to you about is defining some of those. Already given you two. I want to share another one. Actually, I've given you three. I talked about being in a dream. All right, if you had the ideal job, what would it be? What would it look like? What would it feel like to you? You really ought to take some time to be free-handed and go like, yeah, it's okay to dream. It really is. That's one of the great things about living in America. You can get a chance to dream. You may not make it happen, but you get a chance to dream. That's not the case in everywhere. Some places you can't do that. They'll put you in jail. I'm just reading about it over in North Korea. They go like, hey, look, if you do this, you're going to jail. Look, where do you want to go? If that doesn't seem realistic to you, what is your vision? If I can't do that, What's the vision? You may not be at your vision today. You may not even make that happen. But then ask yourself another question. If I can't accomplish that, what do I really want? You know, maybe you want to drive a Mercedes. Let's play with an example. Maybe you want to drive a Mercedes and you start thinking like, well, you know, I really can't afford a $120,000 car. But if I've got an Acura that might be really good, that's a great vision. You can work toward it. But in the meantime, you just want a reliable car. You catch what I'm saying? I went from a dream to my vision to what I really want is a car that gets me from A to B every day in a reliable manner. And if it gets if it gets below the minimum, you know, I don't have that reliable car. Well, at least just take it to the shop once a month instead of every day. Huh? What is it? What will I take? You may not be able to drive the Mercedes. You may not have the money for the Acura yet. Just want a reliable car. Huh? It may not be the best looking car, but it's reliable. And what's the minimum? Say, look, you gotta form the definitions for those categories. No matter where you are, no matter what job you are, no matter what your occupation is, no matter what your marriage is, no matter what your relationship may be, you have to set those bars if you want to be happy. If otherwise, you can be flip-flop all over the place. Look, then when you get below the minimum of what you would take, here's the problem. That is down the cycle that we start to crash because it's everybody else's problems. It's everybody else's problem. When you get below, you know, it was George because George didn't like me because I had a gray beard. You know, George didn't like me because I wore glasses. George and he's the reason why I don't have a reliable car. Because he didn't change the oil. She didn't call the inspection. It's always somebody else's problem. Until you take total accountability for who you are, where you are, you will always be less than you think you can be. And you will be in a part of this cycle that I call it self-destruct. Huh? You are you will self-destruct. You become mad. There's a thing about depression. You get depressed. It's somebody else's fault. The reason why you depressed. It's somebody else's fault. The reason why it was the sun. It was just too hot to work. Until you get to a point where you say, you know what, I've had enough of this. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. Look, just an introduction. I bring this to a close. There's so much because see what you really have to do. We really need to spend a little bit more time to talk about some of those definitions. And then when you get to the place where you say, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm not going to be here anymore. You must decide then, what do I need to do to get out of the crisis that I'm in? Because it's not blaming everybody else. There's only one person that's accountable. Surprise, it's you. Thank you.
All right, all right. So that is the introduction to the cycle of emotions. Nicole says, I am at that point right now. I agree. Okay. So yeah. So if you all enjoyed that, let me know. Drop it in the chat. Just put a thumbs up or put a thumbs up. And we'll definitely see if we can have my daddy come back and talk to us more and go more in depth into that. So all right, y'all. That is, yes, I've been working on it. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, but that it concludes tonight's session. And again, if you enjoyed this, we will be having more in the future that we can take part in and just help us go from one level to the next, to move, to elevate, to grow, and to be better versions of ourselves. So love y'all, and thanks so much